Me and Andy here today. We're here to talk about Veeam Backup and Replication V9, making the most of the upgrade. So we're going to go over all the V9 features. Really going to try to focus on V9, guys, but feel free to ask any kind of questions you need about anything in the new product. So, Andy?
Jason, go ahead and introduce yourself, and then I can follow up.
Yeah. My name is Jason Thomas. I'm the Veeam expert here at Mirazon. I've been doing virtualization and storage for a little over a decade now. That is my primary focus, and that always goes so hand in hand with Veeam and backups. That's always been my primary focus.
And everybody, I'm Andy Barhorst. I'm located in Columbus, Ohio. I'm a senior systems engineer with Veeam. I've been with Veeam for just about 3 years, and a lot of my day-to-day operations are ensuring that potential customers are kind of evaluating the solution, making sure it works, fits in their environment. Also, I do from time to time.
Hey, Andy, don't forget that
Yes.
You're driving the screen and you haven't actually moved it.
I did. Sorry.
Oh.
I must have had it paused. I apologize.
I was like, I stumbled through mine a little bit. I'm like, oh, okay.
Hey, it's all right. That's, you know, not all engineers can be perfect.
Technology.
Yeah, and this new stuff. Anyway, so like I was saying, I work a lot with our customers kind of on the forefront to really help them get the most out of Veeam as a solution. I am Veeam certified, also certified within VMware, and in my past life, I was a Veeam customer. So I ran a mid-sized VMware data center, and Veeam was our primary data protection solution. So I have a lot of practical real-world experience leveraging Veeam, also, you know, positioning and helping customers use Veeam. So I think our first poll question is, Jason.
Yeah. What version? Yeah. What version of Veeam Backup Replication are you everyone currently running on?
We can give that a quick second. Let everybody get a chance to respond to the poll.
Okay, it looks like the poll's not showing up, so we're having a great technical start here to the webinar. So we do have to actually launch the poll.
Well, I'm seeing within the chat we're getting a lot of 8s.
There you go.
We've got a few 9s that have popped up here. So wonderful, great. Glad to see, you know, a lot of people are taking advantage of version 9 and the release. Glad to see that we have a lot of really great enhancements that I'm personally very excited about. Yep, we do have the poll open, so.
Still got a lot of 8 out there, but that's good. It's always good to be a little cautious and get the V9. So it looks like everybody's got the poll in, so I think we can move forward, Andy.
Perfect. All right. So it looks like a few things on our agenda today. I mean, the underlying theme here is let's make the most out of backups and kind of making your backups really easy and seamless. From an agenda perspective, we're going to cover some scale-out backup repositories, dig into BitLooker. Everybody may be asking, well, what is BitLooker? So we'll dig into some of that and explain why it's important and how you can really enable it. We'll discuss direct NFS backups, why and how, again. Also the standalone console. A lot of customers were very excited about that. Also some ROBO enhancements. So for those of you that aren't familiar with ROBO, it's remote office branch office. So how do we handle some of those smaller locations? And then also our Veeam Explorers and some of the enhancements around those. Also some new support within the Veeam Explorers and Cloud Connect. So first we'll cover scale-out repository. So what is a scale-out repository? So from a Veeam perspective, traditionally we've created repositories, right? Those repositories were very siloed. They were individual to be a little bit more fluid with handling the backup storage. What we've done is we have a couple different policies. One policy is a locality-based policy, and the other policy is a performance-based policy. So within that, effectively what the scale-out repository allows you to do is put multiple repositories underneath one namespace, if you will. So now you're no longer having to break up your backup jobs to target repository 1 and then have another backup job focusing on repository 2. You could create one large scale-out repository, have all of your backup jobs point to that scale-out repository, and effectively not have to manage the underlying storage. So when you get to the point where you have hit a retention, you've hit a wall on maybe you have 4 terabytes of backup storage, and you're at 3.9, well, in order to increase that, traditionally what you might have to do is take that array offline, maybe add a new one, move some of your jobs over to a new backup repository, remap them, start the process again. With the scale repository, we now can add another extent underneath and essentially effectively add more storage to a repository in a much easier to manage process. Jason, I got a good question for you. Have you had many customers looking at this so far that you've interacted with? And from a field perspective and working with a lot of your Veeam customers, what's the general feedback on the scale-out repository?
We definitely have a lot of customers looking at it, and you know, me personally, it was the single biggest feature that I was excited for in V9. This is really a fix, and it's kind of one of those things that when it came up to me, it's like, wow, I didn't know I needed this so much when I didn't have it. But now that it's an option, it's like, how did I ever get by without this? Especially in the bigger customers where, you know, some of the people on this webinar out there really see the limitation that once you get to a certain size in Veeam, just say, you know, 40, 50 jobs plus, you know, Veeam starts becoming a little bit of a micromanagement challenge. You know, you get a lot of jobs linking back and forth, but we all kind of just got used to that daily life. So it's been really exciting, and I see scale-out backup repositories taking off in a lot of areas. One thing we do want to cover for people here that, you know, want to jump in and use scale-out backup repositories on your current setups, that we need to understand the licensing limitations. Licensing limitations are going to be on standard, does not support scale-out backup repositories. Our enterprise version of Veeam will only support up to 3 extents. So you can have a repository, you can add 3 extensions to it. And then our Enterprise Plus customers, that gives you unlimited ability to add as many extents as you need to. There's also a couple limitations for the current types of jobs. This really means that, you know, when you set up your Veeam, you're not going to just set up a repository and say, hey, I can group it all together. I'm going to make it all scale out. This is awesome. Done deal. Your Veeam backup jobs for the server itself, like your configuration backup, your replica metadata, if you're doing any of the endpoint backups where you point to a repository on your actual Veeam server, those type of things are not actually supported on the scale-out repository, so you will need to actually separate off a standard repository for those kind of job functions. So just a little something to keep in mind when you're architecting it. It looks like we have a question on this. It says, can you convert current storage to? Yes, Veeam actually built in some automation to that in the current product, you can basically say, hey, here's a repository, I want to create it into a scale-out backup repository, and it will go and relink your jobs and move everything to that scale-out. With the only gotcha being that you have to make sure you have none of the mentioned unsupported types in that repository, so you may need to move some things around. But a clean repository can be easily upgraded to a scale-out with a stints. Andy, one thing, I guess, well, another thing I'll talk about, and we lost you there for a little bit at the beginning, so I apologize, guys. I lost you for like 2 minutes. I didn't hear you talking. So I think we lost a little bit of the front of it. We have in the picture here that improved synthetic full and backup performance. We talk about the way that you point your jobs to the scale-out backup repository. Did you cover any of that?
I didn't. So basically what it allows you to do is with the synthetic full backup creation, when you're doing more of a performance-based policy with the scale-out repository, we're enabling you to really choose where you put your full backups and where you put your incremental backups as well. So what you see here is now you have multiple repositories contributing I/O to do these synthetic processes, no longer reading and writing to the exact same storage array when you're trying to create those synthetic full backups on a weekly basis. So the transforms happen a lot faster. You're also able to distribute the load across multiple arrays versus reading and writing to the exact same set of disks.
Yeah, but always keep in mind, that sounds really good, but it is a virtual pool of storage. There's a lot of different technology that's kind of did that. So always keep in mind you do put yourself at a little bit of a data risk that way, because you'll have your fulls and your incrementals and things separated on arrays. So it's a good note to remember that, if you have multiple stints and you just happen to lose, array number 2, and you have everything spread across, you could have some data loss and stuff there between the jobs. So, weigh the benefits of your performance and make sure that's architected still correctly to make sure you're not actually causing yourself to maybe have a little more risk. So the performance side is the one
safety
job.
Net that we do.
Go ahead, Andy.
I apologize. One safety net that we do have built into the solution itself is if the location of the full backup files is found offline or not reachable, Veeam will immediately kick off on the next backup a full backup. So we will make sure that we're going to go back to your infrastructure and get a full backup due to the fact that we can't access or find the full backup file location.
And there is a setting in there, guys, that you can also just tell it to, hey, I'm going to keep a backup job on volume A, volume B, and it's called, keep job local, and it will actually just allow you to still combine all that as one storage type, so your efficiency of using it to the max improves, but the job can actually still stay separate to an individual physical volume. So, there's a lot of flexibility and control. So, I always just kind of tell everybody that, make sure you're thinking through that, make sure the architecture makes sense. It's really nice to see new features and kind of just want to jump in and use them. BitLooker, everybody's favorite new feature. I know it's mine. It's funny around the office because everybody just loves the BitLooker. Not to be confused with BitLocker. It's funny, internal story here at Mirazon. The first blog I wrote on V9, I mentioned BitLooker and probably a few things, had no less than 3 people send it back to me on the proofread and says, man, you cannot spell BitLocker. What is wrong with you? Like, you spelled this wrong like 5 times. Like, it's not BitLocker. It's BitLooker. So what does BitLooker mean? BitLookers are a exciting new technology that Veeam has came up to, really make your backups even more efficient. And long story short, to really go into, Veeam being an image-based backup utility is block level. If we're all familiar with the way MTFS and things work, if you delete a file in Windows, what does that truly mean? It only actually means that, that file is marked for deletion and will be overwritten the next time it needs to write new data. Well, what does that mean to Veeam when it looks at it from the block level is that, if there's data there, there's data there. Veeam really had no way of looking to say, is this actual real data, or is this just some kind of a deleted pointer, or is this some kind of swap file? So this technology is really cool that, Veeam is already kind of capturing all that data and allowing all the different data sets that they have been able to capture, that now they can look at it and say, hey, we can see these deleted blocks, and therefore when we back up, we know that we can exclude these. And we also get the benefit of being able to exclude the swap and hibernation files that we know that we don't really need in the backup. So it really helps bring in some of the functionality that some of our agent backed up utilities have been able to do that would poke back at Veeam a little bit because they're agent inside the OS and they could see these things. It really kind of gets Veeam back on the same level playing field of being able to do this stuff inside the guest OS. But a really big exciting feature being that since we can actually exclude blocks, it also is now possible in Veeam that, before you could only exclude by the virtual disk level. And that worked great for some scenarios, but we all had machines that, hey, the DBA punches a bunch of files over here in backup. We have archive folders. We have stuff that, as much as you tell your users not to do something, they're always going to do it anyways, and, it just blew the backup files out. So now we can actually go in and actually do, file and folder exclusions and be able to actually take that out of the backup job post-process and not have to send that in your backups, not have to replicate it, all the great things that comes with.
Now, one thing to note, it's not enabled by default on a upgrade to version 9. It's very simple to enable this. There are actually 3 checkboxes when you're under the storage tab doing the advanced configuration, looking at where we configure the dedupe and the compression. So you really, you're just going to hit 3 checkboxes for the deleted files, the swap and hibernation files, and then also any user files that are found as blocks that need to be excluded as well. So Veeam has seen this as kind of a general across the board. We've seen anywhere between a 15 and 20% reduction in the amount of data that we have to carry moving forward, just due to the fact that we can exclude a lot of this. So it's been a great benefit from us from a storage consumption perspective.
Internal here at Mirazon, our internal IT guys, that we turned this on, and they came back to me within like 3 days. It was saving us like 800 gigs. So pretty, pretty big savings that, it's a couple boxes. It just happens. A really good question that's really good to note, and I'm glad that we asked it, is we're seeing what is the performance cost of enabling BitLooker. There is a performance, a little bit of cost that I'm just going to say that I do use the term post-process. So, Veeam backs up the disk. It has its guest indexing files. It builds a metadata of the disk itself, and then we look at that by, change block trackings, all these different tools. So it does actually, your Veeam server actually takes a little bit of a memory overhead to make sure that it processes, so that it builds these data sets in memory. That actually, for a normal backup job, it's not going to be a huge overhead. I know at Veeam, and Andy kind of helped me what you're seeing on the field a little bit, it was kind of mentioned to me in a lot of the classes that if you exclude really big folders, I was being told 150,000, 200,000 files, you could expect to see a gig or 2 of RAM usage per job. So it was something to kind of calculate of, if you have this big file server that has millions of files, you definitely want to put some planning into that, it's going to have some memory usage that is going to go up when you have BitLooker turned on.
Yeah, you're exactly right. But for the most part, it's really going to be negligible for what you're trying to save space-wise. So if it's something you're looking at taking advantage of, by all means, I highly recommend it. And it's very simple to enable. So.
Yeah, I mean, nowadays, I like to tell people memory's cheap, and when we're building new Veeam servers, we're actually kind of loading them up more for RAM, and I don't see it as a big issue, but for the older environments being upgraded, it's a little something that, you might want to throw a little more RAM in the box. I've got a couple other questions here. Any reason you would not want to do this? The bigger thing with Veeam not turning it on by default is Veeam's always been a really good QA. As they come out with new features, they never like to rock the boat. So if you have a very consistent environment that, runs great every day, no warnings, no errors, that Veeam's pretty hesitant about just turning new features on when you upgrade. And, I can't think of too many examples where you really wouldn't want to use it. They just don't want to disrupt your data sets when you upgrade and give you that power to say, hey, I'm going to start using new features. Andy, have you seen anything in the field that would really say a reason not to have BitLooker on?
No, I highly recommend enabling it, and your point's exactly right, Jason. The reason we don't enable it by default is if a customer's happy with the way they have their backup jobs currently deployed, we don't want to change that. But all new installations of Veeam, non-upgrade, already have this enabled. So we clearly identify that this by default is a great option to have enabled. It's going to save you space and really allow you to provide still great data protection for all of your VMs.
Yeah, a couple other small questions. Will it increase job time? It does have the potential to maybe add a little bit of time to the job, but it should be really negligible as long as you have the resources. One other question here. It's only going to enable going forward, so you're only going to see the savings on your newly created backup files. It's something to go back in time and actually take the bits out of the current files. So you'll see a net new change on your jobs that you enable it for, but if you have long retention periods, it'll take a little bit to cycle through. Cody, okay. If you enable BitLooker and then your system does not have enough horsepower, can you just simply disable it again? I don't think that's a problem. Andy, have you seen, is there a problem going back and forth? That's not an example I'm ran into. I wouldn't see it be a problem, but just to verify.
No, they're just check boxes, so you should be fine.
Okay.
It's not an issue.
It is BitLooker itself. Andy, did we have any screenshots or anything for BitLooker to show it in the job? Or can you speak to that really quick? People asking where they turn it on in the job.
I don't, but I can actually show you real quickly.
Yeah,
so here's our demo lab here, and as we pop into one of these jobs, for those of you that have not seen version 9, we do have some new colors within the UI here. Yep. But like I said, when you're under the storage tab, this is where you'd hit the advanced, and it's under the storage tab here, and this is where you would enable the data reduction checkboxes. So these are your 3 boxes that you would, essentially 2 boxes here. The inline dedupe was already here previous, but these 2 boxes here, you would go in and enable those in order to essentially turn on BitLooker. Did we have any other questions?
Yeah, we got all kinds of questions coming in. Everybody's really talkative, and that's good. That's good. Guys, some of these I'm going to get the type to you in the question box because I really do want to stay focused on the slides we're on. So try to keep the questions around where we're at, and then we'll have some Q&A at the end too for generalization.
So for an upgrade to version 9, from 8, no, you do not have to redo backup jobs. Your jobs will continue as normal. You won't need a new full backup. You can just continue the incremental chain and move forward.
Yep. Okay. So direct NFS backups. To a lot of people, this may not seem like a big deal. Andy, have you seen this kind of taken off in some of the environments you see? Like, I love the technology, but it does have a small kind of window to what I see from the storage side, but I think it's an awesome technology, awesome move by Veeam. So what's your kind of thoughts on some of this?
So one of the things about direct NFS backup is that historically it's not really been something that a lot of our customers have taken advantage of, and that's just due in large part to you have your NFS network, and most people back up either directly through their virtual infrastructure or they might back up over a fiber channel or iSCSI network. Now for those NFS networks, Veeam's based on Windows. We deploy a lot of our services on Windows. Historically, Windows pulling data from NFS volumes, it's not really the optimal performance. Well, Veeam took that and looked at it and said, hey, how can we improve backup speeds? How can we pull data faster from NFS volumes? A lot of VMware customers leverage NFS volumes. So what we did is we took that technology and created our own NFS client. This client allows us to effectively pull data directly from the NFS data stores and back them up extremely fast. Supports both version 3 and version 4.1. For those of you that maybe aren't running vSphere 6, that's where VMware introduced version 4.1 within vSphere 6. So we offer plenty of support from an NFS perspective far as anything running on VMware.
Yeah, so it's good to see that the file-enabled SANs are going to start getting a lot of the same performance, and a lot of customers, in a way, I'm traditionally did it that we do a lot of direct SAN fiber channel attached storage, and this really kind of levels the playing field of kind of getting both on the same performance. It also kind of really helps that Veeam's going above and beyond to try to get storage integration, bring on more vendors. People ask me every day, I'm sure Andy, you get this too, is like, when are you going to support X? When are you going to do this? That takes time. It's all about the APIs, but a lot of your newer storage vendors, I'm just going to say in the industry, you're seeing a lot more NFS. There are a lot of them. They're a lot more what I'm going to say a fouler. And what I mean by a fouler is that they run a file system. They're not block level. And that's where they're doing their dedupe. That's where they're doing a lot of the fancier software type solutions. So this also opens the door of, if it's an NFS SAN and you can present it to a Windows box, then now you do have a better direct connect option to go to your Veeam server, and that's cool. It really includes a lot more people. Don't look like we're getting too many NFS questions here. So, standalone console. Andy, how long have we been waiting for a standalone console? I know that's something I'm always wanted or thought was curious since the very early Veeam days.
So in my 6 years of being around Veeam, so this is going back to 4, pretty much starting with 5, I've always wondered, why do we need to log in and RDP into that server in order to work on backups? And various different reasons. I won't bore you with all of them. A lot of them have to do with trying to provide write locks and data protection and making sure that we don't have multiple people impeding on jobs. But we finally have a console. This console is your traditional Windows-based console. It allows you to have multiple admins logged in at the same time. We've made the proper adjustments so that if an admin's modifying backup job 1, admin 2 wants to come in and modify backup job 1, it'll tell it, hey, look, you can't modify this job's locked, and users basically, another admin is basically modifying this. And I think it's a great design. It's exceptionally well when you have maybe multiple consoles. It allows you to really manage things much easier than it previously were, and obviously you can put it on your desktop, so that's a great plus.
Yeah, it's actually really snappy too, guys. Like, I haven't really noticed a big difference, speed-wise, usability. It's been working great on that I've worked on it now, so I've noticed, no difference in performance or, accessibility. There's no limitations. It's really nice. So now it allows you to, I always struggle, and I even get on some of the other engineers here that it's kind of funny that, a lot of times the Veeam server is a physical box, so sometimes that gets to be a little bit more of a so-called jump box. And I log onto the Veeam server and be like, what kind of software did you guys install today? I'm going to go kick the network guys off. They're doing all kinds of stuff, dirtying up the Veeam box. So you know what? Now we can lock them out and get them off the server. Say, hey, this is doing backups. This is important. Leave it alone. Let's see. Question. Standalone console, is this an agent client or web-based? It is a thick client. So it comes with the Veeam install, and there's just another install option on there, and you just have a standalone console option. So it is a full-blown thick client that you install on your Windows workstation of choice. It's not web-based. Veeam's not pulling a VMware on here. They seem to care about user experience, and they're not going to do that to us, right, Andy?
We actually kind of took a page out of that same book, right? A lot of VMware admins love the thick client. Yeah, I'm being one of them. I'm one of them. So I'm more than happy that we went with the thick client route. Sometimes, every once in a while, I'll get a customer saying, do you have a web client?
Yes, and enterprise manager. What do you want to do?
Yeah. That's exactly right. We do have some web stuff, but above and beyond anything else, I think our standalone client is a great addition to any admin's tool. It's a perfect way to manage the environment.
Yep. All right. I think that's good for standalone client.
Charles, we agree. No worries.
Yeah. Charles, you're going to run out of the limit of the questions that you can ask in one webinar. Comments, questions.
All right. ROBO enhancements. This has been something that Veeam's definitely needed. Jason, I'm sure you can talk about some of that with a lot of your clients.
Yeah, and the big thing to this and how I've been explaining this to customers, because I think a lot of people take this for granted. If you're not me and Andy and you're not architecting and looking at this all the time, I mean, sometimes you really just got to understand how this interaction happens and why is this a big deal. You know, if you have customers, and I will say that I see this as a bigger deal for probably the mid-level to enterprise customers, or just a customer that has geographical locations that they're dealing with on remote sites. Because if you look at our little picture here, you know, previous Veeam versions, a lot of people didn't realize that all your Veeam resources, we got very used to doing the backup proxy, and that becomes common nature, and everybody kind of understands that. But when you need to initiate restores, any kind of other operations that need to happen from your backup set, and your backup repository is at the remote session, those kind of interactions previous to V9 would have to go back to your main backup server. Well, you start seeing instantaneously, it's like, hey, you know, Explorer, some of these big file backups can be big tasks. That could be a lot going on. And now I'm sending them over my WAN link. I'm sending them over my MPLS that, you know, I obviously, the closer you can be to the data is better. You know, proxy showed us that, you know, hey, look how much better we can do this. Veeam saw this as a potential problem and said, hey, you know, it's easy for us to somewhat separate out the roles. Let's give the abilities for you to be able to choose. And this is where the guest interaction proxy and the mount server came up. Really, it's giving you the ability to therefore dedicate some other servers that are close to the backup data and assign them the additional roles, so therefore you're not sending as much stuff back over the wire. Andy, you want to kind of talk about what the guest interaction proxy does and what the mount server does?
Sure, yeah, that's a great thing to kind of discuss in further lengths. The guest interaction proxy, as you can imagine, is our ability to, again, break out another role. So traditionally, our proxy has been something that we've delegated out restore processes to. And even during our backup chain, we'll do some interactions with Windows-based virtual machines at the guest level. So traditionally, we've leveraged the backup server to inject that runtime service, to quiesce VSS, to truncate logs, to make sure everything's transaction consistent. Now what we have is, at that remote site, we would have to shoot all of that data over the WAN to provide that VSS quiescence. Well, now we can delegate a role, like Jason was saying, with the guest interaction proxy to keep all of that interaction local to the remote site. Allows you to do a couple things. You don't have to pull anything over the WAN, so that's super important. Also, if you need to do any indexing of virtual machine data, scale out resources to basically be able to distribute workloads, it works extremely well. And that, combined with the mount server, allows you to effectively manage one of your remote sites from a central location, but still have everything function locally at each remote office. And we've seen a tremendous improvement in performance, and that just makes the solution extremely scalable.
Okay. Don't see too many questions on the guest interaction proxy. You know, it is going to be a unique situation, but for the people that need it, if you have a lot of remote locations, it can be a game changer. So, you know, don't feel like you have to actually go out and start separating stuff. You can keep it just the way you're doing it now. It still performs really well. So Veeam Explorer updates. You know, everybody loves Veeam Explorers. I think we'd all agree out there that Veeam's went to great lengths to not only provide us with an awesome backup and recovery product, but actually being able to give you value in your backups. And what do I mean by value? I really mean that, you know, I got all this data sitting here. How do I leverage it to really make my job as an admin easier? And this is where the Explorers came in. You know, we're all been really used to the Shane Explorers for, you know, years now. That, you know, how cool is it that I can restore single mailboxes, items, so on. So what's some of the new stuff that they improved for us on V9? The big one, out there is really, Explorer for Oracle. There's a lot of customers out there that are really heavy in the Oracle side. They're not as much SQL, even though, that's still a smaller percentage. So Explorer for Oracle, it does support Windows and Linux-based Oracle database. The only gotcha that I'm seeing here in the real world that, there's not support for RAC or ASM cluster Oracle. So that's kind of the same as SQL, that we're not having full integration quite with a big Oracle cluster setup. Maybe we have their kind of own tools to deal with the backup, but it's a great tool for your Oracle databases. New functionality of AD Explorers. AD Explorer is awesome. If you guys haven't played around with it, even just in the test lab, I really recommend kind of getting out there and doing it. It's really powerful and can really help you on a lot of normal tasks that you may even just kind of overlook. But what's some of the low-hanging fruit that Veeam's seen as requests? GPOs. I mean, how many times have you had somebody go in, modify a GPO, remove a GPO? It didn't work out well, and you're like, man, I wish I had a copy of that GPO. I didn't back it up. I'm not, I wasn't prepared for that. So they added that into the AD Explorer now, and it sees it's a DC. It's actually going to go out and copy your GPO folder and actually keep that in the backup job. So easily go replicate a GPO. DNS records. This comes to mind. I've seen it so many times in real life that this always happens, that you go onto a DC, DNS scavenging was not set up like previously, and you go out and you see a bunch of old DNS records, and you're like, hey, I need to clean this up. I'm going to turn scavenging on. You scavenge it, and you don't realize that you just deleted a whole bunch of DHCP records that are actually still good, but not really getting updated for years, and they're just kind of hanging out there because nobody made it a static, nobody set up reservations. It was just hanging out on DHCP. And you turn on scavenging, and you delete all of it. And now it's a mad scramble of, hey, what is that DNS for this server that, I'm getting all these calls about now? So a really quick, easy to go back and say, hey, just show me the DNS records for yesterday and let me pick and choose them, and I can just restore the DNS records back. Super simple stuff, but such huge time savers for admins. Exchange 2016 support. Nothing really to add there. That's the latest and greatest. 2016 is very much in the wild now, so, just making sure that our P's and Q's are crossed on the 2016 support. Export reporting. Andy, you might be able to talk to a little bit on this. I'm seeing some of this. This is really around the security concerns of how do we control backup admins that, you'll see some of the reports in the news of how things happen. And a lot of that happened from admins saying, hey, I have backups of the Exchange server. What keeps admin A from going and restoring the mailbox to a PST of the CEO of the company, and then taking it home and reading to see what's going on?
That's a great question. I think at the end of the day, security is one of those things that when we're defining restore operator roles, we do tie that back to some AD accounts, and from within AD, we also define security access capabilities within Exchange. So locally, you can provide some of that, some of those just security restrictions from within Exchange when you provide admin access to different locations within mailboxes. Now, from a Veeam perspective, when we're providing data protection for that mail server, we want to show back what admins are looking for, what they're restoring, not basically the tattletale, but to kind of keep people honest, right? So we'll specify what data was searched for, we'll specify what data was exported. Showing the criteria is an important thing to show basically what was being restored. Also, we'll provide reports showing what PST files were exported as well. Now, one other thing that we did touch on was the export size estimation. So basically, that's going to enable your admins to basically predict kind of the size of a search query, and basically tell you, if I'm going to export an entire user's mailbox, what's the size of that mailbox going to be, and how large is that file? It's just really just to kind of help protect you against maybe restoring somebody's mailbox that might be, 20, 30, 40 gigs without expecting that type of size of restore.
It sounds so simple, but if you haven't been in that situation, it's a silly feature, but oh so important, because you open that 20 gig mailbox, and in the previous version, it really didn't let you know. You just clicked on the mailbox and it would sit there and run and spin, and you kind of just hanged out. And then 3 hours later, it finally loaded the 20 gig mailbox, and it's like, hey, okay, that was a really huge mailbox. Man, I wish I knew that. So it's a requested feature that Veeam threw us a bone on, and that's really cool.
Try to avoid some of the surprises.
Yeah.
Now, a couple enhancements we made around SQL. So piggybacking on version 8 and our integration with Microsoft and SQL, we've added now table level recovery and the ability to get even more granular with some database object recovery. So basically allowing some of our SQL developers to kind of a little bit more easily restore individual procedures, functions, maybe some views, just to allow our DBAs to have more access. Remote staging is important. It's really going to allow for kind of some easier transaction level recoveries. And it really helps to eliminate the need for any licensed copies of SQL Server for the backup and replication server. So you can think if you're a smaller environment, you're leveraging SQL Express. That's great. A lot of our small to medium business can actually function entirely on SQL Express. But when you need to go restore a database that's larger than 10 gig, you're going to run into an issue. That's where this remote staging SQL Server is very beneficial, and that helps out a lot of our customers.
Yeah, even from the versioning, one thing I'm really run into and learned that SQL likes to be in the same version. So if you have a 2008 R2, for example, SQL in your environment, and you install Veeam, and Veeam's going to install 2012, 2014, it's going to be current Express. SQL is going to be unhappy with you if you take a 2008 backup and try to mount it in that 2014 server. It's going to say, hey, I'm not the same version. I have different functions. In the past, what we would have to do is that I would actually set up a separate SQL server and kind of use that as my local staging. And I had to make that SQL version match the same edition and version as what the production environment is. So with that remote staging, actually just really eliminates some of that and really makes that tie in together. But it's still something to think about, that you do have to actually match your versions and try to put some thought into if your Veeam is going to be a different SQL version than what your production SQL is that you're backing up, that it makes your compatibility of some of these recoveries a little bit more of a challenge.
And lastly, we have SharePoint. So SharePoint's been a nice Microsoft tool that we've supported as well. Traditionally, we were doing lists and content restores, some items, so granular restore capabilities. We now have full site restores and site collection restores. So, really for any customer that's leveraging SharePoint that has a tool specific for providing data protection for SharePoint, if you love it, great. If you're not so hot about it, this is an amazing tool from a recovery standpoint, just to provide our customers another way to restore data out of a very popular application.
Yeah, we all love SharePoint permissions, right? So as much as we can make SharePoint permissions easier, we're for it.
So I think we have a poll. So do you use tape backups?
This is an interesting poll because I've actually sold probably more tape in the last 6 months than I have in the last 5 years. So it's weird to say that tape's making a comeback. And Veeam is definitely in the forefront of that, giving us those support options. So give everybody a couple minutes here to be able to get in the vote. At least everybody is yes or no. I haven't seen any I don't knows yet, and that's always a good sign. I always throw that in there. We're like, I don't know what we back up to. That's good. All right. I think everybody's
John says
in.
we need a not yet option.
Yeah, not yet. Well, you could put yourself kind of in the yes. Yes, you want to. It's in the idea.
That's funny.
So I think that leads us into our next slide, and lo and behold, I do think it's tape enhancements. Looky there.
Yeah.
Andy, tell us all the great new tape enhancements. Yeah.
Sure. So one big thing Veeam has done over the history of the last 10 years of being a data protection company, we've tried to be a more modern company, right? Tape has always been seen as legacy, something of the past. And, you know, as you kind of navigate through the industry, and we're now eclipsing over 175,000 customers globally, it's one of those things where we're finding that some of our customers really need tape. And not that we didn't realize they needed tape, but they need tape to really facilitate their retention for whatever purposes there may be. I know some financial industries have retention for 7 years to keep data. Some places have to keep employee data, healthcare industries as well. So Veeam has heard those calls, and we've made a lot of enhancements around that. GFS Media Pools is definitely one of my favorite additions to the tape side. Basically what we're doing here is we're now natively putting the long-term retention and tape rotation and tape aging into our tape capabilities natively. Previous to version 9, there were ways to make it effectively working within the solution, but now we're making it a much easier implementation for our customers. Backup files and being able to put individual VMs directly onto a tape makes it a lot easier. In version 9, and maybe some of you may or may not be aware, but one change that we've put on the repository level is the ability to no longer put all of your virtual machines that are in a backup job into one VBK. We now are able to break out virtual machines into their own VBK and their own VIBs or VRBs, whatever the backup chain is. So that enables customers to easily send individual VMs off to a tape and to store them. Now, what makes that really important is when you're pulling it back, you no longer have to pull back, let's say, a 4 terabyte VBK. You can pull back that 200 gig VM directly off a tape. It's going to be a lot easier, a lot faster, and it's just a lot cleaner for a lot of our customers. And then parallel processing. We now can do multiple tape jobs to multiple tape drives at the same time, effectively really improving tape performance and allowing our customers to get the most out of their tape infrastructure. Jason, what have some of your interactions with the version 9 tape been?
You know, one thing I want to see, and if there's questions out here, because I think there's a bit of a mystery sometimes with tape. You know, a lot of us, even that's been in the industry for a while, I think we are kind of in on the end of tape, so maybe some of us are just not familiar with the tape terms and how tape works. So this slide is actually really interesting for me, for guys to kind of understand that if you look at your database and your tape catalog, backup catalog, you know, think of that as, you know, kind of Veeam doing your virtual tape library. You know, we used to have physical tape libraries that was kind of maintaining, you know, what's on what tape, what's where. And Veeam kind of does a really good job of kind of doing that for you. And then as you see as the infrastructure side, you really kind of see that Veeam allows you to leverage much lower, you know, could be just single tape drives on a tape server. So, you know, you're giving a Windows box as a tape server, and you think of it as kind of just like your backup proxy, but for tape. And it's just going to be a server that's going to have tape drives attached to it, and then you can see how you can kind of just scale that out. And you don't really need the, you know, we all don't need the huge tape library to switch in tapes. This kind of allows you to also scale as you need it, that it can be just as simple as a small server with 2 direct attached tape drives hanging off of it, and, you know, you're good to go. You have a architecturally sound, you know, virtual tape library. And it's really cool the work that Veeam's put in that to pretty much bring all that together. It makes it a really nice to use product. So I'm seeing it a lot more in the environments now. I think people, you know, everybody's going to say, well, why is that? You know, why does tape matter? I thought tape was dead. The biggest thing I'm seeing it about lately, then, you know, what keeps me up at night is like CryptoWall. The reason tape's making a comeback is some of these viruses like CryptoWall that, you know, there's been blogs on the last couple of versions of CryptoWall that it searches out VBKs. It searches out your shares. You know, they have development cycles. Those developers know that, hey, how do you get out of CryptoWall? You got to have good backups. Well, what do? They start looking for your backups. If we encrypt your backups too, then you have to pay us the ransom. So why is tape important? Because we got to start getting copies of data that we should be going by that 3-2-1 rule, that we're actually still getting a copy of data that's offline in another location to deal with those different scenarios. You know, your live backups are only protected as much as the network that can still talk to your backup server and actually still get infected. You know, if that tape's sitting on a shelf somewhere from yesterday, you know, no virus in the world is going to walk over there and put that tape in for itself. So that's the bigger need that I'm seeing, but the people that's still talking about tape. And we've got some questions here. Okay, Charles has a question about ROBO library. Charles, we'd have to get into that a little bit more depth. There is a nice support document out here that we can send out, or kind of get some link for us to help, that, you know, what libraries, what tape that, you know, Veeam's working with. That list is expanding every day, and a lot of tape vendors and stuff work automatically. You just kind of got to know how to set it up. A lot of them have direct API access, and it really just depends on the age and style of tape. You know, Veeam is doing a good job trying to work on that, but we do have to realize over the last 10 years just how many different kinds of tapes, how many different vendors, that kind of stuff. So, you know, mileage may vary a little bit on getting that set up. Another poll. What dedupe device do you currently use? Or I don't use, you know, why would I use dedupe?
Feel free outside the poll if you want to shoot a chat to say what appliance you're using. Definitely welcome all that.
Yep, so if you put other, tell us what you're using, if you don't mind. Okay. We do have a couple in here. We have a couple 2012 R2s. Yeah, that's always a good option. Yep, ZFS Target by John. Yep. Let me speak on that a little thing. You know, I guess we probably could have put Windows in there. 2012 R2 is a good dedupe option. It was highly used at the beginning when it kind of came out as a feature. I will say that 2016 server is going to actually make some really big enhancements for that, and I know even Anton himself and Veeam were all very, very happy and ready for that to happen. The scalability of 2012 is almost easier as a bigger customer to, you know, outgrow, and I guess that's why I haven't thought about it some. So we're worried about the dedupe that's actually in the supported list here. If you notice, this is the Veeam current supported dedupe appliances. So I think our poll is set up. Yep, got a couple more Barracuda. Okay. Yep. So what is the dedupe? What did Veeam do to even make dedupe better? I kind of mentioned a little bit of that thing that, you know, they did add in some more support for, I think this round, Andy, it's HP Storefront and HP Catalyst is the integration of V9. They really integrate for the dedupe appliances.
Yeah, definitely. So from a vendor perspective, we have storage integrations specifically with particular appliances. But from a general perspective, we've made a lot of enhancements on the back end with our backup files. The per VM backup file ability now enables us to have multiple streams, writing down to multiple VBKs, meaning we're putting each VM in its own VBK. This is extremely beneficial, and a lot of you Server 2012 dedupe admins will definitely want to enable this for your repository. But you can enable breaking them out into individual backup file chains based on the VM. Again, multiple streams, go into multiple VBKs, much better I/O, much better performance. Also, it allows Server 2012 or any other dedupe appliance to effectively work on those files at a much smaller file block size, because we're no longer dealing with maybe a 2 terabyte backup file. We're dealing with maybe a 150 gig or 200 gig VBK. A lot easier.
Yeah.
Also, one big improvement we made in addition to that was active fulls. for the backup copy job. So any of you that have been leveraging backup copy jobs for retention to do the GFS retention on disk off to a dedupe appliance, you would have seen any type of synthetic operation be extremely taxing on that appliance or on that server 2012 dedupe volume. We now have the ability to do active fulls off to active fulls within backup copy job. So you see a much better performance from that perspective within the backup copy, even integrated with the dedupe appliances.
Yeah, so, guys, if you do run into this, one of the pain points with like 2012, for example, is when you got over a terabyte in file size, your dedupe efficiencies, really fall off. So the ability to split this out is a huge gain in dedupe to allow all those files to work against each other. So it really is it's a big improvement. Andy was saying a little bit about the speed. A lot of dedupe appliances, I see that they're severely ingest limited. You can only give them so much data that they're going to churn through. But what a lot of people don't realize is that, take data, dedupe appliance A, and I give it a session, it will write data at 50 megs all day long. And that's good until you get bigger. And it's like, well, 50 megs, I can't get through my data cycle. But that same appliance can actually do 8 different sessions at 50 meg per. It just has to be able to be threaded out. So almost all dedupe appliances really need the threading to get the performance up to actually be able to ingest larger and larger sums of data in a cycle. So it's a fairly big change. Veeam Cloud Connect. To me, this one seems straightforward. I get asked this question a lot. Our previous cloud backup was cool with Cloud Connect. It started, we could get a backup to the cloud. It was more like a colo repository that it was only backup focused. Now Veeam has basically turned on the full feature set of now you can replicate to Veeam Cloud Connect and actually have the ability to do partial, full site failover, run things from that replica the same way that you would do your, a lot of us are very used to having a remote location that we had, ESX setting at, Hyper-V setting at, that we could run VMs from. This really enables us to be very similar. The only gotcha is that, you still got to work on your cloud hosting agreement. They have to be able to give you compute and resources on demand, and you work that out with your Cloud Connect provider, whoever that would be. So therefore, when you spin up machines, they're going to give you resources to run. But very cool, very cool. Very gets it on par with a lot of the other backup products that are doing a lot more cloud-based replication run from the cloud. Are you seeing this a lot? Is the adoption rate pretty high on Andy of people being excited about this?
It's extremely high. Our cloud teams internally are just expanding rapidly, and due in large part to the fact that a lot of Veeam customers really appreciate what Veeam brings to the table. So taking advantage of the DR replication capabilities at a software layer, we're handling all of the virtual networking. We really make it simple for our customers to deploy Cloud Connect replication, because at the end of the day, if you're on version 9, you already own it. And all you need to do is contact one of the Veeam service providers to essentially purchase some operating capabilities within their infrastructure. So it's an operation model. It's not a capital model. It makes it really affordable, really easy for a lot of our customers to really get into it and really have a DR solution without having to have that big capital expenditure of buying a bunch of hardware. Now, one thing that I really can appreciate with Cloud Connect is the fact that I like to disclaim it with Veeam doesn't own the cloud. We have partners that have opted to carry our software infrastructure for the cloud portion and offer that as a service. So you're getting a third party that's held up to Veeam standards, and they're also making sure that you have the best infrastructure behind the scenes. And obviously it's entirely up to you to investigate and choose who your favorite go-to service provider would be. If you ever need any recommendations or any assistance, feel free to kind of hit up the Veeam sales page, or even ask your friends at Mirazon. They'd be more than happy to help you with the Cloud Connect portion.
Okay, I think we're getting a little here on time, so moving forward, I think we have only a few slides left. Another quick poll.
Yeah.
Who out there is really leveraging the Veeam endpoint protection? I know I love it. I use it at home, use it on my work laptop. It's awesome. Um, all right, 75% in. Looks like we're 60-40 no. I would be interested, send some questions, send some comments. Is it more of a exposure thing? Is that something you guys want to see more, information on Veeam endpoint? Okay. So Charles is saying, okay, good thing, good feedback. Support for older OS versions. I see where Veeam's at a little bit on that. We're probably not going to support too much that's really not supported from Microsoft, so that gets to be a little bit of a problem. But I see where the need would be on the older physical machines. Yeah. Eli makes up a good point. I mean, you can use it, and I'm recommended this, and in really environments where maybe you have just a few physical servers out there still running. The integration with the full backup and recovery server with Veeam is really good with this product. It is a valid option to maybe get those last couple physical machines backed up and kind of integrated within everything else. So that's also a good use case. Okay, it looks like everybody's getting in here. I think we can close out of the poll and move on. So, general improvements, little bonuses here and there. I like to really talk about, as we were talking about endpoint protection. I put this on this slide because I also want to see people that are you guys going through the steps of actually linking it back to your Veeam server. If you link it back to your Veeam server, it's actually really cool because you can run any of those Veeam Explorers that we just talked about. All those tools become available to you on the Veeam endpoint protection. So I really say if you haven't played with that, even for your labs and your demos, I highly recommend it. Storage level corruption guard is a cool feature. The way I understood it in the classes and stuff that I've been in, that Veeam was doing a lot of this storage guard already on copy jobs, really verifying data. They added this functionality into the backup jobs as well to go ahead and leverage some of the storage level corruption. I understand the use case to get a little bit on a soapbox here. Sure, backup is an awesome product. But, it takes some time to set up. It takes a little bit of automation to get going. So let's be honest, as, admins, a lot of times we probably don't test our backups as much as we should, just to be frank. So, Veeam leveraged a little bit more of, hey, can we do anything on our level to, try to add some additional checks and balances? And they are with V9. The caveat, always remember, garbage in, garbage out is the old saying. So, Veeam can only verify that through any of their processes, through any of the jobs, data did not change from source A to source B. The big thing that's really going to help you is if you get a storage array or something that starts sending out some bit rot, seems to have a little bit of corruption, that therefore you can actually see that from a storage level and actually get that information from Veeam instead of the day that you need to restore the backup and going, oh, that backup just doesn't work. Something's corrupted with it. Sorry, we thought we had backups. I don't have backups now. Don't be too mad at me, boss man. So hopefully, Veeam's going to try to save us there a little bit and try to do what they can. That is it. So any other general questions? I know we're a little tight on time here, guys, so feel free to send any questions. You see me and Andy's contact info there too. If you want to have more of an in-depth conversation, have other more general questions, also feel free to reach directly out to us, or go ahead and put a couple of questions in the chat here. We'll try to go through it real quick. Oh, and I almost forgot about the good part here. We're actually going to do a trivia question here for a little bit of prize giveaway. And that prize is going to be for a $50 Amazon gift card. Just for showing up and dealing with me speaking for an hour. You should be rewarded. So that trivia question we're going to go for, and this will be, just to make the rules clear, first person that puts the correct answer in chat is how we're going to count it. So V9 support, which are the current storage array vendors supported by Veeam? Storage vendors was think from the storage SAN side, so we're not looking at deep appliances, we're looking at from storage support. 3 major players. And for the people that keep saying all is not the answer. And we do have a winner. It is Mr. Sean Ross. I think, nope, actually, sorry, Sean. That's my misreading comment for the day. It is Nick. The true answer to this is EMC HP Dell. Those are major storage APIs supported by Veeam today for storage integration of SAN.
Not Dell. Not up.
Well, I messed this up all the way around. The chat window is moving very fast now, and I can read. I have Dell on the brain. It's Dell. This is my Steve Harvey. Hopefully, like Steve Harvey, this will also help me be more famous and give me commercials, and I can just live off the fame of messing this up.
Wouldn't that money be great?
It would be great, because, you know, he's making bank off saying that wrong. He has new commercials about it. It is. It's the original one I tried to read. Sean is still the actual winner in the order of the chat. So EMC HP NetApp. Miss Ireland is also acceptable answer by Sean. So Sean, they'll be reaching out to you and they'll get your contact information and we'll get your prize to you in some fashion. That we put that on the marketing team. You know, don't be mad at me for that. What were the okay? I got a couple general questions here. What were the transport architecture changes made from V8 to V9? Andy, you want to speak on that a little bit on anything we can share from the back end of, you know, things that changed on the back end between V8 to V9?
The transport architecture changes. For the most part, outside of breaking out the guest interaction proxies and the mount servers, a lot of the transport architecture is exactly the same. We still have our proxies interacting with VMware infrastructure, Hyper-V infrastructure to provide, you know, our same agentless data protection. So there haven't been a lot of transport architecture changes. Maybe more so, we've become more efficient. So we're always trying to refine our interactions and our architecture. So generally, that's typically a lot of the improvements that we've had. And then one of the other biggest changes was the scale-out repository. So that enables us to really be more efficient as well. Yeah, standalone console, that's definitely a great point too, Ernesto.
Yeah, one other question, Thomas, does upgrading from 8 to 9 require a server restart? Yes, it does. It's still a full Veeam upgrade. It's also, you know, depending on your SQL version, especially if the server has been upgraded multiple times, you know, it's going to do a SQL update. You're going to go through all the normal upgrade steps, and it will require a reboot. I actually did one the other day too. That's a good point to let everybody know that it does require Framework 4.5.2. If you do not have the framework on, you'll have to install framework, reboot, then start your upgrade process. And it's still, you know, Enterprise Manager first, BR second. Good FYI also for the upgrade I'm running into personally is 9 doesn't support any kind of 2003 server. So make sure if you still have some 2003 servers, proxies, repositories, clean that stuff up beforehand, or when you try to do the upgrade, it's gonna tell you no. and you're going to have to go clean those jobs up. So just a couple things to think about to go ahead and get that 2003 stuff out of Veeam. Yeah, I see a couple of data core comments. We can definitely get into a conversation on that, but data core is not directly supported. Data core is kind of doing some other things that they do internally to kind of get some support for the storage, but it's not officially sanctioned Veeam support. They're kind of doing some internal work, so we can get into that in details. All right, guys, that looks like everything's somewhat wrapping up. I really appreciate everybody taking out the time, and hopefully if you didn't get your pizza, they're going to work on that, but hopefully everybody enjoyed the food, and thanks for being here.